Hey everyone, welcome back. It's time for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we're going to look at some data about the UK's private sector employment situation.
Interesting.
You know, just kind of see what's going on over there.
Right.
And we've got 3 sources to help us with this. Sharecast.com,
What?
News2424.com, and the Financial Times.
Yeah, those are good ones. They offer kind of different perspectives.
Right, yeah. So hopefully between the 3 we can get a good picture of what's happening.
Yeah.
So News2424.com is reporting that private sector employment in the UK is shrinking at its fastest rate
Oh, wow.
since January 2021.
Okay.
So that's a pretty stark statement right there.
Yeah, that is. And the Financial Times, they point out that if you exclude the period of the pandemic, this is actually the sharpest decline we've seen since the 2009 financial crisis.
Wow.
So that really puts it into perspective.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, this is significant. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
So what's causing this?
Well, a lot of fingers seem to be pointing at Chancellor Rachel Reeves' autumn budget.
Specifically, the £25 billion increase in employer national insurance contributions. You know, those NICs,
Oh, right, the NICs.
which essentially means businesses are now paying more to employ people.
Right. So they're looking at this and going like, okay, something's got to give. We need to make some cuts somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it seems that jobs are on the chopping block.
Yeah.
You know, the Financial Times highlights how this policy is being criticized for shaking business confidence, which in turn leads to those difficult decisions about cutting back.
Right.
And there's also concern that this could lead to higher prices for consumers as businesses try to make up those increased costs.
That makes sense. But it's worth noting that Reeves has defended the policy.
Right.
The Financial Times quotes her saying it's all part of a plan to make the UK Treasury the most pro-growth in the country.
Yeah, so it's that classic economic debate.
Of short-term pain for long-term gain.
Absolutely. But the question is, will it work?
Yeah.
Will these increased costs actually translate into the growth she's hoping for? Or will the negative consequences outweigh the benefits?
Yeah, it's a gamble for sure.
It is.
So we've got this big policy change that's potentially impacting employment. But
Yeah.
is there anything else going on in the broader economy?
Well, there's this important economic indicator called the S&P, Global Flash UK PMI Composite Output Index,
Wow.
which is basically like a thermometer for the UK economy.
Okay.
And readings above 50 mean things are growing, below 50 means they're shrinking. What's interesting is that the index, although still above 50, has dipped and fallen short of expectations, suggesting the UK economy has essentially stalled in the 4th quarter of 2024.
Oh, so it's not a full-blown recession,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
definitely not the growth everyone was hoping for.
Right, it's like the economy is sputtering a bit.
And Sharecast.com adds that even though it's above that 50 mark, the fact that it fell short of expectations is raising some eyebrows.
Yeah, definitely.
So how does this all break down across different sectors?
Well, if we look closer, we can see that the manufacturing sector is being hit particularly hard.
Okay.
Sharecast.com points out that the flash manufacturing PMI, that economic thermometer,
Right.
dropped to an 11-month low in December.
Ouch.
Yeah. And the Financial Times adds that manufacturers' confidence in the UK economy is plummeting at its fastest rate since we were dealing with the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
It's like a double whammy for the manufacturing sector.
Yeah, so manufacturing is taking a hit. But wait, there's a silver lining. It seems like the services sector isn't feeling the pinch as much.
That's right. Sharecast.com highlights that the services PMI actually rose to a 2-month high, showing some resilience in that area.
Okay, that's interesting. So we've got this mixed bag of economic indicators, and it sounds like those policy changes are really shaking things up.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to remember that behind all these numbers and figures are real people.
You're absolutely right. We can't lose sight of the human impact.
Yeah.
These economic trends have very real consequences for people's lives and livelihoods.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in all the data and forget, we're talking about people's jobs and,
Absolutely.
their livelihoods and their futures.
And that human element is captured well by a quote from Chris Williamson at S&P Global Market Intelligence.
Okay.
I found it in the News2424.com article. He says firms are responding to the increase in national insurance contributions and new regulations around staffing with a marked pullback in hiring, causing employment to fall in December at the fastest rate since the global financial crisis in 2009, if the pandemic is excluded.
Wow. That's really powerful. It really makes you think about the consequences of all this.
It does.
Yeah.
And the Financial Times brings up another factor. That's adding fuel to the fire.
What's that?
Rising wages.
Oh, okay. But,
That's a good thing.
well, on the surface, yeah. But it's actually contributing to higher input costs for businesses.
Oh, so it's like this double-edged sword.
Exactly.
But people need more money to keep up with the cost of living.
Yeah.
But then those higher wages are putting more pressure on businesses that are already struggling. Precisely. And it creates this vicious cycle that could lead to even higher prices for consumers, which further erodes purchasing power and fuels inflation.
Oh, man. So we've got businesses facing higher costs, people losing jobs, and this threat of even higher prices. It sounds pretty grim. What's the Bank of England's take on all this?
Well, the Financial Times reports that the Bank of England governor, Andrew Bailey, has called the business response to the NIC's increase the biggest issue following the budget.
So they're not exactly thrilled about it.
No, they're definitely concerned about the ripple effects this is having throughout the economy.
So what can they even do? Is there a way to balance the need to control inflation with the need to support businesses and jobs?
That's the million-dollar question. It's a tightrope walk for policymakers. Some economists argue that the government needs to step in with measures to stimulate job creation.
Oh, like some sort of stimulus package.
Yeah, perhaps through infrastructure projects or tax incentives for businesses that are hiring. But then you've got others who believe that the best course of action is to let the market correct itself, that government intervention could do more harm than good. It's a debate that's likely to continue. The best path forward really depends on a complex mix of political decisions, economic forces, global events.
It's never simple, is it?
No. But one thing is clear. This employment slump is a serious issue that needs careful attention.
Yeah. It's definitely not something to be ignored. You know what's really fascinating about this deep dive is that we've gone beyond just the numbers. We're really getting a sense of the human stories behind all of this.
That's the power of informed discussion. We're not just looking at data points, but we're exploring the consequences for real people.
What does this all mean for the average person in the UK?
That's the crucial question. On a practical level, a shrinking job market makes it harder to find work. Which leads to longer periods of unemployment, more financial strain.
Yeah, and those rising prices could make things even worse.
Exactly. And on a broader level, a struggling economy often leads to decreased consumer confidence, reduced investment.
Oh, so it can become like this downward spiral.
It can.
Yeah.
And ultimately slower economic growth overall.
So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the real-world impact on people and businesses.
Yeah, it really shows how interconnected everything is.
Right, one piece starts to wobble and the whole thing can be affected.
Exactly. And that brings us back to those policies that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the Financial Times did a good job laying out the different viewpoints there. On the one hand, some argue that these increased NICs are necessary to fund essential services and invest in areas that will lead to growth in the long run.
So it's like a short-term sacrifice for long-term gain kind of thing.
Exactly. But then you have those who are very critical of this approach. They argue that raising taxes on businesses will only stifle growth.
Right, because it puts more pressure on them.
Yeah. And ultimately, it'll hurt the very people these policies are meant to help.
It's tricky.
It is a complicated situation.
Yeah, there are no easy answers here.
Right. We have to weigh the potential benefits against the risks and try to understand all the perspectives involved.
So where do we go from here? What can be done to get the UK economy back on track?
Well, some economists are advocating for government intervention to boost job creation.
Okay, so like what? Investing in infrastructure?
Yeah, things like that. Or offering tax breaks to businesses that hire new employees. But then there's also that school of thought that says, let the market correct itself.
Right. We talked about that earlier.
They say too much government meddling can sometimes do more harm than good.
It's tough. It's like you got to find that balance.
Yeah, it's finding that sweet spot.
So what do you think will happen?
Well, the final outcome will likely be shaped by a lot of different factors. Political decisions, economic forces, global events. It's hard to predict.
Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. But the important thing is that we recognize this employment slump as a serious issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can't just ignore it and hope it goes away on its own. Exactly. We need to stay informed and see how things unfold.
Yeah, keep a close eye on those economic indicators.
And while we do that, let's remember that economics is about more than just numbers and trends.
Right. It's about people.
It's about people, their livelihoods, their hopes for the future.
I think that's a great point to end on. You know, we've covered a lot of ground today, but we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, the UK's economic landscape is constantly evolving.
So for everyone listening, we leave you with this thought. What does this employment slump and dip in business confidence really mean for the UK in the long run?
Right. Will the policies in place actually lead to that desired growth? Or will the downsides outweigh the benefits?
It's a big question.
It is something to think about as we all navigate these uncertain times.
And as always, we encourage you to keep digging deeper. Seek out those diverse viewpoints and form your own informed opinions.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the UK's employment situation. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.